Hey Code Crew, in this Firebase tutorial, I'm going to show you how to perform CRUD operations on a Firestore database. CRUD, you say? Yes, create, read, update, and delete. I know, it's an incredibly unfortunate acronym, but so great for jokes, right? Hey, what's up? My name is Chris Ching and welcome to Code with Chris, where everyday people like you and I can learn how to CRUD and to build apps. But before we start, let's help each other out. I'll stop making bad puns and you visit our sponsor, Hostinger. Hostinger offers fast and secure website hosting with an easy-to-use website builder that I haven't seen anywhere else. So you can host and create websites to market your apps even if you don't know anything about web development. And if you're planning to use a CMS like WordPress, which by the way, CodeWithChris.com uses, then you'll be happy to hear that Hostinger is optimized for WordPress speed. With affordable pricing starting at 99 cents a month with an additional 15% off discount when you use the coupon code CodeWithChris, what is there not to like? Check out the link below or click on the link in the description to sign up for your account today. Alright, now let's get started with our Firebase tutorial. Alright, so this video is going to be a continuation of lessons 1 and 2 in our Firebase Firestore tutorial series. Just in case you haven't watched those yet, let me do a quick recap. In the first video, I showed you how to sign up for a Firebase account, how to create your Firebase app, and then how to create the Xcode project. Finally, how to integrate those Firebase libraries into your Xcode project so that it can communicate with the Firebase servers. And we got that working in lesson 1. So if you haven't done that yet, go ahead and watch lesson 1. You can click on the upper left-hand corner for that video. I'll list it out there. Also in lesson 2, I explained a little bit about how the Firestore data model works. We talked about collections and documents inside collections. If that doesn't ring a bell, I would recommend to go and review lesson 2 now. I'll also link to it up there. So now in lesson 3, I am going to continue from that point on. We've got our Xcode project set up. Here we're going to start our Firestore database and I'm going to show you those CRUD operations. And I'm going to just run through all of the different things you can do with it. So we're going to learn how to create documents and collections. We're going to learn how to get the document ID that's auto-generated. I'm going to show you how to update a specific document. I'm going to show you how to delete a document, delete a specific field in a document, and you're also going to learn how to read the data back. Alright, so if all that sounds good, let's get started. So here I'm looking at my Firebase dashboard. What you're going to want to do is click on Database. Now you probably don't have yours set up yet, but I do. What you're going to see is an option to choose either the Firebase real-time database or the Firestore database. I think they're pushing Firestore. It's their newer product. It's the 2nd generation one. So it's going to be at the top. So create a Firestore database. There's going to be a big button prompting you to create one. When you create one, it's going to ask you where you want to host that database or where you want it to be located. Now, I would just choose the location that's closest to you. The second thing it's going to ask you is what sort of security rules you want to put on it. You can put it in test mode, which is what I've done here. The rules that are defined are public so that anybody can steal, modify, or delete your data, as it's saying right here. It's very alarming because it is very important, but in the development phase, and as we're doing a demo here, we don't have any authentication built into our app yet, so test mode is going to be the easiest for us. Once we have implemented some sort of authentication into our app, then we can go ahead and switch those database rules so that only authenticated users can read and write and so on and so forth. So right now I would recommend to put it into test mode or public mode or whatever they call it. You're going to get a prompt like this, which looks concerning, but it's okay for now. And then finally, you're going to be presented with your brand new empty Firestore database. Now, true to what I said, there are collections in this column right here. And when you click on a collection, you're going to see all the documents in that collection. Now, I don't have any collections right here, but we're going to jump into Xcode right now, and I'm going to show you what sort of statements you can run to start adding some data into your database. All right, so let's jump into Xcode. So here, don't worry about this right now. Let's just do a quick recap of where we left off in lesson 1. So in lesson 1, we had added the Google service info.plist into our Xcode project. We had also added the Firebase libraries as pods. And then in the app delegate, we had imported Firebase up here, and then we had ran this command or have this command here in the did finish launching, so that as soon as the app launches, it's going to run this statement, which is going to set up our database and make it ready to use for us. Now, if you haven't done any of that yet, this was all part of lesson 1. Again, go back and watch that. All right, so we're gonna go into the view controller here. I've got some sample code that I've set up, and I'm gonna run through it with you, and I'm gonna type out new code. So this is just going to be samples. All right, so let's start at the top. The first thing you're going to need to do is to import Firebase. If you're going to want Xcode to recognize those classes, you need to do that. And then the next thing you need to do is to get a reference to your Firestore database. And to do that, you call the Firestore type method of the Firestore class. And that is going to give you a reference to your database. Store it in a constant or variable. In this case, I've declared a constant called db, and I've stored it there. So that's going to be how we run methods and commands against our database. All right, let's start with this, adding a document. This is very, very simple. Use your database reference, and then you're going to specify a collection. Now, this could be an existing collection. It could be a collection that doesn't exist. If it doesn't exist, then it's going to automatically create it. In our case, we have no data, right? So I'm going to type in a collection. I'm just going to make one up. I'm going to call it wine because I just went to Niagara Falls in Toronto and I did a bunch of wine tours, so that's what's on my mind. All right, so we're specifying the wine collection, and we're going to add a document. Now, adding a document, it's going to automatically generate a document ID for you. What we're going to specify next is actually the data for that document. So the data is going to be a dictionary where the keys are strings and the data is a variety of different formats that you could put in there. We discussed all of those different data formats you can use in lesson 2 back then. So you can go back and watch that video if you need to jog your memory. And if you're completely brand new to app development, I forgot to mention that this video series is not meant for the complete beginner. I have another video series to get you up to speed. Make sure you check out my beginner lessons. You can click in the upper left-hand corner. That's going to go through the different data types, dictionaries that we're going to use here, and all of that stuff, so that this video is going to make a lot more sense if you have that sort of knowledge first. Again, this video series is not for complete beginners. All right, so we're going to specify a dictionary here with key value pairs according to the data that we want to store in this document. So for example, all right, I'm going to have a key called year, and it's going to be a number, 2017, and I'm going to have a type, and the value for that is maybe going to be a Pinot Noir. Now this can be whatever format you want, obviously, and the label, maybe I'm going to put it as Peller Estates. That's one of the wineries I went to. As simple as that. Let's run our app right now, and let's see what happens. What it's going to do is create the wine collection because it doesn't exist, and then it's going to add a document to that collection. So let's check out our database. Let me just refresh it right here. And sure enough, there it is, our wine collection. And this is the auto-generated document ID. And here is the data for that document. Label is Peller Estates, type is Pinot Noir, and year is 2017, exactly like I've specified in here. So that's how you basically add data to your database. Now, in some cases, you might want the document ID, right? That is generated for your document. So there's a way to do that. Let's go back to the view controller. Let me show you how to do that. The way you do that is you use db again. Actually, let me just type it out for you so it's going to make a little more sense instead of uncommenting the code. So you use your reference to the database, and then you go ahead and call your collection again. We were going to use wine again, and this time you just call the document method. That's going to create a brand new document in that collection. Now, what you're going to do is assign that document reference to a variable or a constant. So in this case, I'm going to put it into a constant called new document. And the thing is, now you have a reference to that newly generated document so that you can access the ID property of it and you can get access to that document ID. So here, let's go new document. This is the one that's just created. And we're going to call a different method here called setData. Now, setData is basically going to, as it suggests, replace that data in that document with whatever dictionary that you pass in. Now, there is an optional merge property or parameter, sorry, that instead of replacing, you're going to be merging the data with the existing record. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's first do this. Let's set data, and I'll show you this example. So here we are setting the data for our document. So here I'm going to say year 2017. Again, let's do the type is, let's do a different type of wine, and label is and yes, I wanted to do an additional key value pair here where I specify the document ID. So here I just want to demonstrate that you have access to that document and you can access the document ID property, which is a string ID. So let's run this code and see what happens. Oh, yes, we don't see anything. So you can see that it's updated now. Check this out. This is our new document that we just added. It's the second type of wine that I added. But check this out. I had a reference to that auto-generated document ID, and I was able to put it in here. So that's useful to know in case you need the auto-generated ID. Now let's take a look at some other ways of setting data. Now what happens if you want to add a document to your collection with a specific ID? You don't always have to use the auto-generated one. So you can do that. It's very simple. Let's take a look here. Adding a document with a specific ID. So it's just like adding a new document up here. The difference is that this time you're going to manually specify the document ID that you want. So the collection for us is wine. And then you're going to go document, and you're going to choose this one, and you're going to be able to specify a document path, or in this case it would be the document ID. So let us specify one like that, and then we would call the set data off of that. So up here we did collection and then add document. That's just going to auto-generate the ID for that document. This time we are saying that collection, we're specifying the document that we want, and then we are going to set the data for that document. Now if that document doesn't exist, right, if this document ID doesn't exist, it's going to create a brand new document with that ID for you. All right, so I'm just going to put some dummy data here. We don't need to go through it again. So let me do that. All right, and run it. And then in here, you're going to see that appear. So that is the specific document ID that I wanted. Now what happens if the document ID already exists? So here my data was test and test. So if this document ID already exists and you're calling set data, well, it's essentially going to replace whatever data is already in that document with the data that you're passing in here. So here I'm going to go, test 2. Let's just do something else so you can tell the difference. So I'm going to do hello and hello. Right, and if we take a look now, you can see that it basically replaced whatever was in that document. Right, so this is essentially also a way to update an existing document. Right, it's a way to specify a new document with your own custom document ID, but it's also a way to update an existing document if you know the document ID already. and that is going to replace the data. But what if you don't want to replace the data? What if you want to add to it, or you want to just update a specific field? Well, check this out. If I wanted to update the hello field or hello data, I would just specify that same key and then specify a different value. And what that's going to do is it's going to replace the existing value with my new data. So that's how you would update an existing field. If you wanted to add a new field, like a new key value pair, you could do that. You could say new key and new value. However, this is where you need to use that second parameter that I showed you. It was called merge, and here you would put true. And what happens when you specify the merge parameter with passing in true? It is going to essentially add whatever field that doesn't exist. It'll just tack it on to the document. So here you can see that it hasn't replaced it. It's actually just added that to there. All right, so I actually skipped ahead a little bit. So that was what I was trying to show here in this example, updating a specific document ID. All right, so there's that. And you probably have noticed, if you're a little more experienced, that there is a completion handler when you're adding documents and stuff like that, so you can check for errors. And this is how that would work. So let's say that I'm going to add a new document, so to my wine collection. You can see here that I can pass in the data, but I can also specify a completion closure where I would basically get the results back, any errors that might have happened. So let's take a look at that. So the error is, I'm just going to put test and test. And this completion handler, let's open that up. There's a parameter in there called error. So I'm going to give that a parameter name. And all you have to do is just check if that error parameter is nil or not. So if error equals error, then there was an error. This is just, in case you're not familiar with it, a way to check if this is nil or not. So if error is not nil, it's going to be assigned to error, and I'm going to be able to access it in here. Now, otherwise, error is nil. So operation completed successfully. So that is how you would detect for errors in your write operations. All right, now let's take a look at deleting. So I realize I'm commenting out a lot of the code, but if you download the sample code in the link below the description, I'll clean it up for you guys so you only have like one set of sample code and not like two sets like this, because that looks kind of messy and confusing. All right, so deleting a document, it's pretty simple. I don't think I need to type this out. So I'm just going to uncomment my example here. You specify the collection, you specify the specific document that you want to delete, and then you just call the delete method on it. You can also just delete a single field, and this is how you would do that. Again, you'd specify the collection and then the document, and then you call an update data method, not a set data like we did up there. This is update data, and then you just pass in the field that you want to get rid of, and the value instead, it would be this, and that would essentially remove that key value pair from that document. And all of this, guys, is in the documentation. So always have this handy right here. Like always in the upper right hand corner, you'll see a link that says go to docs. And when you go there, just in case you don't know how to navigate that or where to go, you can go to get started for iOS. And then down here, look for Cloud Firestore. Open that up, go to add and manage data. And this is the stuff in this section. This is the stuff that I'm showing you guys right here. All right. Detecting for errors is exactly the same way. There's an example here, but essentially it is the same thing that we did up here, where you pass in a closure to that completion handler, and there's an error parameter, and you just check if that error is nil or not, just to see if your delete your deleting was successful or not. Actually, here, I'm going to just show you an example here, since there wasn't a sample, I just realized. So let's do wine, let's do document, and one of the document IDs I just added was this, and then you're going to call delete. So you can just call regular delete, or you can call delete with completion parameter, right? And then you'd open that up, and there would be an error parameter in there, and you just, you know, use optional binding again. Or an easier way, if you don't really understand this syntax, is just, you know, if error is not equal to nil, then we have an error, else delete was successful. So that's using a simple if statement, and that might be easier to understand if you're unfamiliar with the Swift syntax. All right, now we're going to get into the reading. So let's go ahead and comment out this deletion code. And let's check out reading a specific document first. Let's take a look at the simplest example, which would be if you knew the collection that you wanted to access, and you knew the specific document that you wanted as well. So let's say Pinot Noir 2017. Then you would be able to call get document, just like that. And that's it. There is obviously a completion handler so that you can get the data. That's double click that to open it up. There is a document snapshot and there is an error. So let's go ahead and put some parameter names for that. And so you check if there's no errors first. So you would, let's say if error is nil, meaning that there is no error, then, okay, first check for error, and then you would check that this document exists. Because, tell you what, this document that we specify here might not exist in that collection, right? And if it does not exist, that's not necessarily an error per se, but what would happen is that the document has an exists property that would tell you if that document exists or not, very simply. And you kind of have to check if you have to check two things. If the document is not nil and document exists is true. That means that there is a document, right? And here's the document data inside this document variable. So you can either use simple if statements, right, to do that, or you can use optional binding again. But just in case, I will use the simpler syntax. So you can go ahead and force unwrap that because you've already checked that it's not nil here. So you can safely force unwrap and check the exists property because it's going to stop here if it's nil. All right, so you're gonna say, you know, let actual or let document data equals document dot data, and there you see that return value of this data method is your dictionary containing all of the key value pairs for that document. So that is how you would get the data for it, and then obviously you'd have to parse it into whatever object you'd want, or maybe you want to keep it as a dictionary, you know, that's up to you. But that's how you would get that dictionary data out of Firestore database. So that's a very simple example of getting a single document. Now, what if you wanted to get all the documents in a certain collection? Well, you could do that. Getting all documents from a collection. You would go db.collection, and then we'll specify our wine collection. And instead of get document, this time it's pluralized, and we say get documents. That's this one right here with the completion parameter. And again, opening this up will give us the two parameters of this closure, which is the, this would be actually, you would call it the snapshot, and this would be error. The reason is because the actual documents are in a property of the snapshot. So let me demonstrate. So if error is nil, so that means there was no error, then if you take a look at snapshot, in here, documents, right? This is where each document will live. So you would do something like, if error is not equal nil, and then you could combine it up here. You could say, and snapshot is not equal to nil as well. Then maybe you will say, for document in snapshot documents, right? And then in here you would say, let document data equal document dot data. So here you're just looping through each document that was returned inside a for loop, and then here you're accessing that particular document's dictionary data. So that's how you're going to get the data out of every single document of the wine collection. But this is all fine and good. Typically you wouldn't want to retrieve all of the documents in a collection. You'd want to somehow filter them, right? Or query. So there are various ways to do that. Getting a subset of documents. So here, let's specify the wine collection. That's what we want to look in. And then we can specify a where clause, where you can indicate a specific field that you want to look at, where it's equal to something, or less than something maybe, or maybe greater than, or that specific array contains some sort of value, and there's different ones that you can take a look at. But that is how you would kind of specify a subset of those documents. So why don't we just say something very simple like where type is equal true. Let's say year is equal to 2017. All right, so we're gonna grab all the wines that were of this year, and then you would say get documents, and then you would proceed as you did up here, right? Because you're getting back a collection of documents. So you're gonna check if the error is nil, you're gonna check that the snapshot is not nil, and then you're gonna grab the documents, or you're gonna loop through the documents of the snapshot, and then for each document, you're gonna grab its data. And that's how you're gonna get that data out. Now in a future video, I will show you more concretely, because we're definitely gonna be building apps with these skills that we're learning here. And so I'm gonna show you concretely how to declare a structure of maybe like a wine structure with has all of our properties, and then we can extract this dictionary data and create an array of wine objects or something like that. Now there is even more that you can do, but for this initial video on CRUD operations, this is where I want to stop. Some of the things that I'm going to cover in a future video about Firestore or some of these topics, you can also feel free to go and check out those URLs, but for now this is a great place to stop as an introduction. So now you know how to create, read, update, and delete data in your Firestore database. But Firestore is only a fraction of what you can do on the Firebase platform. If you want to watch more Firebase tutorials, check out the playlist over there. And if you don't want to miss the next Firebase tutorial, make sure you hit that subscribe button below and click on that bell notification icon as well. And finally, if you want to download any of the source code you saw today, check out the links below, and don't forget to check out our sponsor, Hostinger. All right, I'll see you in the next lesson.